Hey guys, it is NCS Fan 001 here for the start of a new cooking series. Today we are doing our first recipes from the official Destiny Cookbook. This is written by Victoria Rosenthal, the same person that wrote the Fallout Cookbook. Finally getting the chance to start making recipes from this. So we have an introduction here. Pause it if you wish to read it here. But I've looked through this cookbook and I definitely like a lot of what I see in here. There's a lot of recipes that I feel fairly confident in making. So there's all sorts of stuff about, I guess, what recipes certain people like. A Meals in the Last City page. Hopefully you can zoom it in enough and pause it to be able to read it. An entertainment page. This is very fitting because the day this is being recorded is literally the day after I got my 100% of trophies in Destiny 2, so that's exciting. Oh, well, forgot to turn off my ringer on my phone. Probably better do that before we keep going. But there's a long ingredients guide telling us about various food items, which is actually really helpful, just telling us about, what certain things are that people might be less familiar with, like kimchi, kombu, bonito flakes, all that kind of stuff. There's also a section for dietary considerations, should you be needing a vegetarian or gluten-free or lactose-free diet. So this video is actually going to be covering 4 recipes at once, because these are it's more of a pre-episode than a true episode, because we're not making anything too complicated, but we're making 4 different seasonings, basically special salts. So the first one we're making is the lemon garlic pepper salt. Lemons can be so difficult to find around the tower. Whenever a merchant has some, I buy as many as I can carry. By using several of them for the zest in this recipe, I have access to that lovely lemon flavor all year around. And don't forget to include the citric acid if you can obtain it, as it really makes everything pop. This one is an easy difficulty recipe with a prep time of 30 minutes, a cook time of an hour. It yields half a cup of seasoning, and it's used in 4 future recipes: chicken broth, avgolemano, hush puppies, and smoked turkey legs. I think I was almost looking at the other one there. So that's going to be our first recipe that we're going to make. So guys, our first step is going to be combining the 8 lemons that have been zested, already done that, with 3 tablespoons of black peppercorns. So Target was actually, well, those went everywhere. That's a good way to start the series, because I already know that you guys who have seen my Fallout cooking videos, you know exactly what to expect from me attempting to cook things. So we need 3 tablespoons of black peppercorn. That's 1. You also are going to want to preheat your oven to 170 degrees for this recipe, and for one of the other ones that we're going to do today. So go ahead and do that before we really get too far into it. I mean, I know that doesn't take long because that's not really all that hot for an oven. Alright, we've got our 3 tablespoons of black peppercorn, so now we're going to take and mix all of this onto a baking sheet and then bake it at 170 degrees Fahrenheit, better specify that, for 35 minutes or until the lemon is sort of cooked but not burnt. Alright guys, it's all laid out on a baking sheet here. So I'm going to put this in the oven. It's going to sit in there for about 35 minutes or until the lemon is dry but not like burnt. So while we do that, we're actually going to go ahead and do the second recipe because it's the easiest one of the 4. So our second recipe is the spicy smoked paprika salt. This spice combination is the perfect thing to bring with you for those long treks outside of the tower, and is an excellent savory addition to any dish that can enhance even the drabbest rations. So this is another easy difficulty recipe that only takes a prep time of 5 minutes because it's literally just assembling ingredients. It yields half a cup of seasoning, and it's used in kefta, gambas al ajillo, fried chicken, smoked turkey legs, and twice-baked sweet potatoes. So this recipe is very simple. It only requires a 1/4 cup of salt, 2 tablespoons of ground smoked paprika, a tablespoon of ground coriander, a tablespoon of garlic powder, and 4 teaspoons of ground cayenne pepper. So I'm going to be trying out some different setups for some of these recipes and see if maybe I can show the ingredients a little bit better versus showing me more. You guys let me know what you like better because, you know, it's a new cookbook. It's a whole new start pretty much for all this stuff. So for this recipe, like I said, we need 2 tablespoons of ground smoked paprika. It's going to take a moment to get all that in because actually I'm just going to have to probably open this to be able to get it out a little more easily. 1 tablespoon of ground smoked paprika. I'm not a big paprika person normally, so hopefully that doesn't affect this recipe too negatively. Now we need a tablespoon of ground coriander. And I'm mixing this in a bowl instead of the airtight container for now because I'll just use a funnel to get it into my airtight container because my containers are a little bit small. Now I can say that I'm actually currently doing this during the time where I'm in basically quarantine for COVID, so that dates this a little bit. So I can't fully taste or smell anything. Thankfully, I had a lot of this stuff already at home, and then Target is awesome. They have a lot of stuff, and they carry it right out to the car for you so you can be safe and all, which is really cool. So a tablespoon of that. Now we need a tablespoon of garlic powder. So this is basically just like a spice mix or like a rub that you could put on, I guess you could put it on like barbecue and stuff if you really wanted to, though I don't think you'd ever put this particular mixture on barbecue. But maybe it's good, I don't know, I won't knock it till I've tried it at least. We need a 1/4 cup of salt, which is around 60 to 80 milliliters. Actually, I'm trying to check that right now. It's around 60 milliliters for those of you overseas and, you know, everywhere that isn't the US. All right, that's around a 1/4 cup of salt. And finally, we need 4 teaspoons of ground cayenne. Probably need a better teaspoon thing. This one's not in the best condition anymore. 1 teaspoon, 2 teaspoon, 3 teaspoon, 4 teaspoon. All right, so that's everything we're gonna need for this one. So now we're just gonna mix all that up. I'm gonna use my little 1/4 teaspoon thing right here. Oh, that looks cool. That actually looks really cool. I don't know if the camera's doing it enough justice, but it's got a nice color mixture in there. Now I will say the coriander is the only ingredient I was a little concerned about because it's a little bit older. Like, I don't think spices truly expire, but they lose some of their flavor and smell over time. I think that's how it works, but I could be wrong on that, so yeah, probably could be wrong on that. But that definitely looks like a solid spice mixture, so I've got a D2 written on top of this to indicate that this was the second of the 4 spices that I'm making. This is just a container that had some kind of cheap other thing that I bought for at the Dollar Tree or something. And I now have a funnel. Believe it or not, I now have a funnel. I slowly acquire these things that I need for recipes. So we're just gonna pour this in. Man, that actually filled up the entire container and a little bit beyond. That's cutting it very close to the top. All right, so I guess that this one's gonna have a little bit left over, so this thing holds a little bit under 1/2 cup, I guess, because that's about how much it said it would make, but that should be enough for all the future recipes. So, we got a little container of spice, and you can sort of see it on top of there. From what little I can taste of it, it's not bad at all. So I can't wait to try this one out. So now guys, I'm gonna take a little break. We're gonna let the current recipe that's cooking be finished. And yeah, I got to also charge my camera battery a little bit, so I'll be back in just a moment. Alright guys, we're back here for the first recipe, and I gotta say it came out quite well. I can actually kind of smell it a little bit. Unfortunately, we apparently need a spice grinder for the next step, which I didn't realize at first. I don't know what that is, and I don't have one. So, there are other options though, such as rolling pins. We'll see if this actually works. Oh, yep, that's gonna work. It's not exactly how it wants it to be, but you know, it'll get the job done. Adapt, improvise, overcome, all that good stuff. Well, kind of, maybe. That's not really doing anything. It also said you could use like a mortar and pestle, and I know what that is, but I don't have that either, because, well, I don't, because I have no reason for it. Really all I can do is just crush them. So I guess any recipe that required this, I might have to use just standard black pepper for this instead. Okay, after a quick Google search, I'm pretty sure that black pepper and black peppercorns are like the same thing. Pretty much that black pepper just comes from the black peppercorns. So if it comes down to it, I can always just add some black pepper in any recipe that requires this, and hopefully that'll be good enough. Alright, now we're going to transfer all this to a bowl, which I have another one right here. I don't have a whole lot of like bowls, especially for mixing and stuff. Some of these are crushed though, so that's good. But like I said, I can always just probably add some standard black pepper to any recipe that requires this, because, like I said, I don't even know what a spice... I mean, I have an idea of what a spice grinder is. It grinds up spices, but I've never seen one or owned one. So now we need to combine this mixture with the rest of our ingredients, which is, so we need 1 tablespoon of dried oregano, using my second set of measuring cups here. 1 tablespoon dried oregano, 2 tablespoons of salt. I might need to get out my other thing of salt. Good thing I bought another one recently. Yeah, this is like the last of my Cincinnati Kroger salt. End of an era, I guess. Yeah, it sure is. I'm going to add just a sprinkle more because that was just a little bit short of where I needed to be. Then we need a 1/4 cup of garlic powder. This is using up like all of my spices. Which some of them it's fine because I don't use them that often, but I do use garlic in a lot of stuff, so I'm going to need to go buy more garlic powder probably. And finally, we need 2 teaspoons of citric acid. This is optional, but I happen to have some citric acid, so I don't see why we wouldn't use it if we can. So this is definitely going to be like a tangier flavor. 1 teaspoon. 2 teaspoons. I can start putting some of these things away. Alright, so I'm going to stir up this mixture, sort of. Actually, I'm just going to combine it by hand. It's going to be a little bit easier. Still got a little bit of moisture in it, so that's good. Thought I turned my phone off. I guess I didn't. This has a really weird texture to it. It feels like sand. So once we have this, we can place it in an airtight container for up to 4 months. I don't think I'm going to need my funnel for this one. Yeah, it feels like sand or brown sugar. Honestly though, the black peppercorns not being crushed will just give it some more crunch to whatever I did end up making with this. I don't know if it was supposed to feel like sand though. Maybe I was supposed to have this be more dried out because it's not 100% dried out. Well, only time will tell. Any recipe that I use this in might be wrong because of that, but I won't be using it in that many recipes, so it's probably okay. All right, that is our lemon garlic pepper salt. So our third recipe from this first video is the orange and lime rosemary salt. Though the ingredients are simple, the salt combination brightens flavor and elevates any dish it's sprinkled on, making the food seem fancier than it actually is. This is another easy difficulty recipe with a prep time of 30 minutes, a cook time of an hour. It yields half a cup of seasoning, and it's used in only 2 recipes, buttermilk biscuits and duck poutine. Which is good because I don't know if I'll eat the duck poutine, but I will absolutely attempt to make buttermilk biscuits. This recipe is going to take 2 zested oranges, 4 zested limes, a tablespoon of black peppercorns, 3 sprigs of fresh rosemary, and 1/3 cup of salt. So this one's simpler than that first recipe. So we need to preheat the oven to 170, which has already happened. So now we're going to mix together everything except for the salt onto a baking sheet and then place that in the oven for 35 minutes or until the citrus is dry and not burnt. This time I'm going to try to dry the citrus a little bit more, so I might cook it a little bit longer. Alright, so the zests are already in here, all mixed together. So now we are going to need 3 sprigs of fresh rosemary. This is the best I could do. I don't know if this is correct, but honestly, it's me we're talking about. I think that's about 3 sprigs. And I like rosemary, so this should be fine if it's a little bit extra on the rosemary. And then we just need a tablespoon of black peppercorns. This one's going to be less peppery, which is probably a good thing given how the last one went. So we're going to mix all that together, then I'm going to put it on a baking sheet, and it's going to cook for 35 minutes, but it's probably going to take a little bit longer than that, given the previous one did. Alright guys, I'm finally back with that third salt mixture. I did manage to get it to dry out significantly better, so I'm actually going to dry the other mixture again as well. So I'm going to do a little bit of crushing this up. It's not exactly what it wants us to do, but maybe it'll work. Maybe it'll make it a little bit better, but I would recommend if you want to actually get it dry, you're going to need to keep it in the oven for longer or at a higher heat. I would recommend somewhere closer to 200 degrees Fahrenheit if you want to cook it in that amount of time. I had to up it a couple of times to get it anywhere close to dry, and now it's pretty good. Still can't really crush up the peppercorns all that well because I don't have a spice grinder, but now I know that it exists and I can use it in the future. So crush it up a little bit. So we're going to drop this into a bowl. And now with that, we add in 1/3 a cup of salt, which that seems like more than 1/3 of a cup of salt, but it's, I guess, not. So I'm just going to mix that up. But this one should be definitely better than the other one, just because it's more properly dried out. But like I said, I'm going to go dry the other one again some more in the oven at a higher temperature and for longer. Alright, now I'm just going to take this and put it in my third container here. I've put duct tape on them, which looks better. So I'm pretty sure this is just going to end up tasting more like regular salt than anything because it's heavily salt. I don't think you need as much salt for this one, so I would say be maybe a little bit more careful about that with the whole 1/3 of a cup. I don't think you need that much. You could probably go with half that much if you want to let the other flavors go through. But follow the recipe, so hopefully it tastes fairly good when it's used on seasoning. I mean, I like salt. Salt's a good thing. So now we are off to our final recipe of the first video, and this one looks like it's going to be actually pretty good. Vanilla cinnamon salt. This mixture is just wonderful, especially for all the sweets I love to pass around during the dawning. It reminds me a bit of snow, but it tastes far better. This is an easy difficulty recipe. It is a prep time of 15 minutes. It yields 1/4 cup of seasoning, and it's used in only 2 other recipes, chocolate palmiers and alkane dragée cookies, or dragée, I guess would be how that's pronounced. It only requires a vanilla bean, 1/4 cup of salt, and half a teaspoon of ground cinnamon. So let's see if I am yet able, and I also need to have a bowl out here for this. So let's see if I'm actually able to properly split and scrape this vanilla bean. Now, let me just say something about this. I can actually smell that, which is good. Vanilla beans are stupid expensive. I'm going to say that right now. These things are so just stupid expensive. It's insane. This one bean, was around $9. Now, it's partially because I got it from Publix because Target, the grocery store I've started going to now, because they do a pickup in the parking lot, as I've talked about before, they didn't have this particular spice. So I was able to get it from Publix, but at a lot higher cost probably. These things are expensive, like I said. Like $8 or $9 for a vanilla bean, which is kind of crazy to think about. That like even, I don't think cocoa is that much. So scraping this dry is going to take a little while. Alright guys, it's obviously not a lot of vanilla. You can't get a whole lot out of those things, but that's about the best I can do. I would hope that maybe you could replace this with vanilla extract if you're going for, you know, an obviously cheaper option. So now we need to add the salt and the ground cinnamon until the vanilla is evenly distributed in here. So we're going to need a 1/4 cup of salt, which again seems like it might be a little too much. I feel like you could probably do with less than that, but I'm not going to question it. So I feel like, I guess it's going to be salty, but like a little bit sweetness to it. So pour in the salt. And now we need a 1/2 teaspoon of ground cinnamon. This is my 1/2 teaspoon measure. Cinnamon is good. I like cinnamon. Some cinnamon. Remember when the cinnamon challenge was a thing? I do. People are stupid. I'm sure there's also a more efficient way to scrape the vanilla beans than what I was doing. So with all of these recipes, except for the second one, you're supposed to use the salts within like 4 months or something. So I'm going to try to do that. Obviously the second one we can keep as long as we want because it was literally just other spices and seasonings. So that'll last like a good year at least. Most likely. That actually, I can smell that a little bit. That smells fairly good. And it's a good amount of salt, so that should actually be okay. And I'm sure that it'll sort of mix into this a little bit over time. Alright, so now I'm actually going to put these back in my glass vanilla bean container, because this is definitely airtight. My funnel is dry and, oh, well, should probably be a little bit more careful with that. Alright, that's decently full. That's a decently full container. So I will be back one more time once I've fully dried out the other spice that I was working on. Once that gets fully dried, I will come back here and show that because I'm sure it'll look better then. Alright guys, the final salt is currently looking a whole lot better now. It's a lot more dried out, a lot less clumpy. It's got a few little like clumps left in it, but I think it'll be okay where it is. So funnel, now dry, and let's just begin pouring in. Almost looks like granola with like pepper in it that could be like raisins or something. Alright, like I said, it's not perfect, but it looks a whole lot better than it did. So hopefully this seasoning will work out when we eventually do end up using it. This is the one that had lemon in it, the lemon zest. Wow, I can actually taste that. Okay then. Interesting. Very interesting taste. Alright guys, so these are the 4 salts that we have produced. So we have the lemon garlic pepper salt, this one. You can definitely taste the lemon in it. But this one seems like it came out pretty well overall now that it's dried out. So I think that one's gonna work. This spicy smoked paprika salt's probably going to be good because, I mean, it should have some good spice to it and had a little bit of cayenne. It doesn't taste too much like actual salt. This orange and lime rosemary salt I'm a little concerned about because I feel like it has too much salt in it. Like, I feel like a quarter cup of salt or a third a cup of salt was too much. I think if you make this one, you probably want to use less than that. Same with the vanilla flavored salt. It currently looks like sand, and it tastes very, very salty with just the tiniest hint of like sugary sweet flavor in it. So, like I said, I would say that for that third and fourth one, I would say probably should use a little bit less actual salt. But that's just me. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm not an expert, so we'll have to see what happens. So that's our 4 salts for this first recipe from the Destiny Cookbook. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, and in the near future we will be cooking with these salts and spices. So I will see you guys then.